LocalBozo.com is proud to have with us as our guest for an exclusive interview, filmmaker of the documentary You and Me, released on June 1st, Ami Horowitz. Ami, thanks so much for giving us some time today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So we had an opportunity to screen the film. It's enlightening, and in some instances it's downright frightening. As an inside look at the functioning of the United Nations, let's start with what interested you about getting involved with the project.
You know, it's interesting. I didn't know that epiphanies actually existed. I heard people that had them. I never did myself. But that's what it was. I had an epiphany. I had one of those light bulb moments. I was sitting at home on a Saturday night in New York, and I was watching the Michael Moore movie, Bowling for Columbine. And I'd seen it before, and I began drifting off and thinking about the United Nations for some reason. Couldn't tell you why. I was thinking about Rwanda and Sudan and a whole host of other issues around the globe, and wondering, well, these are all these terrible things going on, and whose job is it to stop this? And it obviously became very clear it was the United Nations. That's their role, their job. And I started getting very upset, and I felt two emotions. One, I was infuriated that these things are going on and they're not stopping it. And two was I felt very, very small. I felt like, who am I? It's such a big issue. Nobody cares what I have to think. And I didn't like that feeling, to be honest. And I looked over at the screen. I saw the Bowling for Columbine playing, and I thought, this guy hit upon a really engaging, entertaining medium to get your point of view across. And like a lightning bolt, I knew I had to make a movie. And that was it. I quit my job as I was an investment banker within a few days after that, and I began the process of making this movie.
Once much of the footage was shot, some of which cast UN officials in sort of an unfavorable light, did you have any issues getting the footage cleared to be shown in the film?
No, we didn't, because everybody signs a release, and it was not an issue for us at all, actually. It was obviously a concern for us, but thank God we just dotted our I's and crossed our T's and were able to get everything cleared.
So you quit your job, you sort of start doing some research and getting involved with the project. How long did the documentary take for you to complete from start to finish, and what did you find was the biggest challenge for you in creating a story for the film?
It was almost exactly 5 years from the moment I had the idea to today, June to June. And yeah, it was not an easy process. I mean, it was a process of, first of all, you have to get over the hump of whether or not you can actually get this thing done, right? That was certainly a scary proposition. I mean, here's a guy, I've never had experience making any movies before. How am I going to actually accomplish this? And the whole process is a very anticlimactic process, actually, in that you think to yourself, if I just raise the money to make this, I mean, who's going to want to give me money? If I just raise this money, I'm over the moon. And then once you raise the money, you think to yourself, well, who cares about the money? Now I've got to actually make a movie. How am I going to do that? How am I going to make a great movie? And once you've made what you think is a great movie, you don't rest in your laurels and think, oh my God, I'm so glad I was able to accomplish this. You think, well, who's going to see this? So the whole process, is, to be honest, maybe it's my own personal picadillos, has been very anticlimactic for me.
I think the biggest message taken from the film is the relative inability for the UN to intervene appropriately, even in peacekeeping situations, and seemingly their hands are tied in most other situations as well. Impropriety among sections of government is really nothing new, but how startled were you personally once you began uncovering what actually goes on at the UN?
I was pretty startled. It was very disconcerting for a number of reasons. First of all, this is my money, right? We fund this. The world funds it, and in particular the U.S., who gives upwards of 25% of the entire budget. And on top of that, this is their job to make the world a better place, and what they're doing is making it, in some cases, worse. Some of the stories I heard and documented just they blew me away. Listen, I knew going in, obviously this is the whole impetus for the movie, that this is not an organization that works well. I knew that. But I had no idea how deep the rabbit hole went. That's really what startled me and shook me. It shook me to my core. That this thing it's at a level that none of us, I think, expected, and I think just blows your head off your shoulders.
Now, some of the footage shown in the film is downright startling. It's unlikely to be shown where people get most of their news coverage. Did you have any pause about using scenes and clips which may have been too intense for some viewers?
No, because I mean, listen, we were initially given some. Let me take a step back. Yes, I think that was certainly a consideration, and I think we certainly dialed it back compared to earlier versions. In fact, we had gotten a rated R from the MPAA, and we ended up working with them to take it down to a PG-13. So I think that, and that's, by the way, it's why we spent so much time and effort on the levity and the humor in the movie. That if this movie was just a straight-up documentary, I think people would have a very hard time getting through it. I think that when you add the jokes, the humor, the irreverence, I think that's what makes it so interesting and so easy to watch. And that was the goal from the beginning. We had to make something that was easy to watch, and I believe that we accomplished it with this movie.
The film is very factual, very real, but it presents an incredibly disheartening view of international relations. What do you hope that moviegoers will take from the final product?
That we shouldn't stand for this. We deserve better as Americans and humanity in general. And that I don't want people to feel the same way that I felt when I thought about this issue. Right? This notion of me being small and unable to really do something to affect change. The truth is, every single viewer can affect change. And here's how I think we can do it. The United Nations relies on American money. Without American money, they can't really survive as they exist today. Since we give, like I said, 25% of their budget. In 2010, over $8 billion. And there's only one group in America which controls the purse strings of the United States, and it's not the president. It's Congress. And Congress is very susceptible to their constituents' point of view, because they're elected every 2 years in the case of the House, and every 6 years in the case of the Senate. And when you call a congressman, when you send a letter or an email, these things aren't just out in the ether. They actually are tangible. They are correlated. They're calculated. The numbers are calculated. And for every phone call, every email, every correspondence, they're given a weight because they assume that X amount of people in their district feel the same way. And I think that if people are outraged enough by the movie, and I believe they will be, and when you go to the unmovie.com, which is the website, when the movie opens, it'll be a portal to help you do that. It'll walk you right through the process, who your senator is, who your congressman is, sample letters, sample scripts, and it encourages people to do exactly that, because we can affect change through Congress, and Congress is ripe, I think, for this kind of issue.
Now, some of your detractors might say that documentaries, while certainly interesting, seem to have their biases. How honest would you say your portrayal of the United Nations actually is, and were you forced to make any artistic compromises to deliver such a captivating story?
Well, it's 100% honest. Listen, I am not a slave to any kind of style. I'm not a slave to anybody's point of view. I'm a slave to one thing. That's the truth. Wherever the truth took me is where this movie would end up being. I never pretended to have an unbiased view of the UN. This is a polemic. Having said that, if the facts took me a different direction, this movie would have a completely different slant. So I'm not afraid to say that this movie is a point of view documentary. First of all, I don't believe that any documentaries are objective. I think every documentary has a point of view, and anybody who says otherwise is lying. So I have no problem admitting it freely, but factual, 100%. Honest, completely. Listen, artistry is part of what you're trying to get across, but the artistry can't get in the way of the facts. Other people, I think, fell victim to that. We did whatever we could to avoid that.
With the film ready for release on June 1st, do you have your next project picked out already that you're looking to tackle?
I can tell you what it's not going to be. There will not be a You and Me Part 2. I have not. I'd be lying if I said I haven't thought about it. But the truth is, I have not in any way come to a decision on what my next project is. If, God willing, there will be a next project. If people want me to make another movie, they've got to go see this movie and make it. My investors are not going to want to take a loss on the second straight movie. So we've got to return the money at least to my investors.
Ami, is there anything else you'd like to leave for the readers of LocalBozo.com?
No, I think we covered it. I think that again, I just want to stress to your listeners and readers that this is not. I promise you guys, this is not going to be a dry documentary. It's entertaining, it's engaging, it's funny. I took a lot of physical risks to do this, so please make it worth my while.
The exciting new documentary, You and Me, from filmmaker Ami Horowitz, opens Friday, June 1st in select theaters and on video on demand from your local cable operators the same day. It's an absolutely shocking look at one of the most fundamental organizations in the world and is absolutely worth checking out for yourself. Ami Horowitz, thanks so much for your time today on LocalBozo.com, and all the best to you with your film.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate the sentiment, and I appreciate the time.